Good Thursday afternoon to you. Hope you're having a great day. Thanks for joining us on Sports4CLE. Talking a lot of Browns and Lions getting ready to do battle at 1 o'clock over at First Energy Stadium. A little later in the show, we will be joined by Mac Robinson from 92.3 The Fan to go even a little bit further into the Browns and Lions. Out in Berea today, Nick Chubb, Demetric Felton still on the COVID list. John Kelly was activated off the COVID list, so he's good to go. Myles Garrett back at practice. Baker Mayfield out on the field practicing. Troy Hill with that sprained neck still not going. Also out Anthony Schwartz as well as A.J. Green in concussion protocol still. And on the bike, Donovan Peoples-Jones unable to go. But again, Baker Mayfield back at it, as was Myles Garrett. And word comes out late after practice that the Browns are hopeful that Nick Chubb will be activated off the COVID list tomorrow on Friday, and that he will be good to go for the Browns Sunday against the Lions. That would be a big boost. Well, Baker Mayfield back on the field throwing the football around, and earlier in the day, Alex Van Pelt just talked about, has this offense had to adjust because of Mayfield and what he's able to do physically?
Yeah, I think the mobility is definitely affected from it. But again, he is a guy that wants to be there for his teammates and play every week. And, you know, it's crappy that he is as sore as he is in multiple areas. You know, it shows how much he loves his teammates and wants to play and be out there on Sundays. Yeah, it's definitely going to affect him. A lot of guys are affected with a lot of things at this point in the season, and that's just part of the deal of living in the NFL world.
Well, it's not like from an emotional standpoint. Do you see it kind of piling up and wearing him down that he keeps getting?
He's as tough a mental guy as I've been around. I don't think it'll affect him. I mean, he prepares himself as well as anybody I've been around during the week of preparation. He does a great job trying to get healthy and take care of his body each week. And I think once you get to game day, you know, the juices get flowing, and you know those injuries they're sore, but they're not as sore with all the adrenaline of game day. So hopefully he'll continue to heal and feel better each week. But it is tough, and he is battling through, much like a lot of our guys right now.
Let's welcome in Matt Dery from the Lions Lockdown Podcast, also 92.3 The Fan. And Matt, maybe it's just me, Baker Mayfield has not looked like the same quarterback that he did late last year, or even that he did against Kansas City Chiefs in Week 1 before that shoulder injury, on an interception where he tried to tackle a guy. Bad idea.
No, Dave, good to see you, buddy. I just don't see the same guy either. And we could go on and on about this. There's been so much made of Baker Mayfield, and it's easy, when I'm filling in on the Fan or talking to family in Cleveland about it, it's easy to just go through the Baker Mayfield narratives. But the bottom line is this: the Browns are a better football team when he's healthy and when he's out on the field. I get what Alex Van Pelt is saying. He is a tough guy. And I think injuries play a factor when you're talking about knee, foot, ankle, shoulder, rotator cuff. Guy's banged up. The fact that he's out there playing is fantastic. I think the biggest question now for Sunday is, would it be in the Browns' best interest to sit him and have him rest, not play, and play Case Keenum instead? Because even if give Baker some time, let him heal, because with Keenum out there against this bad Lions team, they might just win the football game anyway.
Yeah, and he did seem to be, when he missed the Thursday night game, came back and played a little bit better after a week off. So I get where you're going with that. Again, I think Kevin Stefanski probably would argue, if we go out there and the Lions, they should have beat the Ravens. They ended up tying the Steelers. To the Browns' credit, they don't have a horrible loss to a team they should really dominate yet. But they also haven't beaten a really good team yet either. It's kind of the definition of a 500 team, isn't it?
It is, and I think that's a major problem because of the expectations and how high they were to start this season. I just don't quite understand why it hasn't clicked. Certainly, they are more of the hunted this year as opposed to the hunters from last year. There's a target on their back, and they've not responded. But look at the rest of the AFC. This thing is wide open. This is not like they're over in the NFC. So they can still win the division. They've got 2 games ahead with the Ravens. They still have some predominantly dominant players, whether it's on that offensive line. Look at what Wyatt Teller has done with Myles Garrett on the defensive side. And there's still some skill players and playmakers with Nick Chubb, and you get a healthy Hunt back and the receivers, where this can still be a pretty good football team. And we love what the head coach has done. But it's time to start doing it. And that starts this weekend against the just a bad football team that they should not lose this football game. There's just no way.
Yeah, and we'll get into them a little bit later. You cover the Lions, so you know firsthand what we are speaking of there. Well, one of the problems with the Browns has been that defense. You can't get a handle on it. At least I can't get a handle on it. When you look at the defense, what do you see?
I see a team with Myles Garrett and then everybody else. I don't understand. And whether you want to blame Joe Woods and get into the whole DC conversation, which I think is a fair discussion, this linebacking crew we thought was upgraded this year. And obviously JOK has been hurt, and I really like him when he's healthy. But this group has not succeeded. And you know, I watched Anthony Walker a little bit last week against the Patriots, and I saw a guy in the wrong position a lot of times. Is that coaching or is that him? We thought the secondary would be better. And of course, Denzel Ward had the pick six a couple of weeks ago and is still a pretty good football player. But I see a defense that's trying to find its identity and got shredded last week. They got their butts kicked. This wasn't just, well, Mac Jones was threading the needle a little bit. That was a butt whooping. And that's unacceptable, especially when you're playing on the road at Foxborough and it looked listless. And so now, when you mentioned 7 more games to play on this schedule, time to get rolling here. Time to start attacking quarterbacks. And whether it's Goff, whether it's Tim Boyle this week for the Lions, get after that team and make a statement in front of your home fans.
Yeah, I would agree. All right, Joe Woods was asked earlier today about the identity of this Browns defense. Here's what he had to say.
Well, I think our identity is being multiple, you know, because now, just like you said, they don't know what they're going to get. And, you know, the game plan, because you play against different schemes and there's different matchups. So when your game plan is like, who do we have to take away, what do we have to stop, and then how we're going to do it. So it'll change slightly week to week. It won't be pressure all the time. It won't be zone all the time. I just really believe in the mix.
Matt, when I hear multiple,
what does that mean?
Yeah, to me it means you can't decide what you want to be. And when you're multiple, I think that means you're trying to scheme around deficiencies. Like you, I think this defense kind of upgraded. And yeah, you can't do the same thing over and over. I get that. You have to change it up. But the foundation of it should be you've got Denzel Ward and Greg Newsome, who are pretty good cover corners. You've got a defensive line that can get after it, play tight, and put pressure on the quarterback.
Yeah, I don't know what that means either. That means, like you said, I can't answer your question and I don't know. There are defenses. If you remember when Matt Patricia was the defensive coordinator of the Patriots, and it was a bend but don't break type of situation, and they played, all man. And then Patricia came to Detroit and did the same thing, and it didn't work because he didn't have the material to do it. You just mentioned Newsome and Ward and Garrett and some pretty good pass rushers there. So that's where you say, you know what? Our scheme, our identity is going to be man. It's going to be attacking. Those Ravens defenses under Wink Martindale, their longtime D coordinator, doesn't matter if Terrell Suggs is there or now what they have there now. They get after you. They send 6 or 7 guys because they know that their safeties and cover guys at the corner spot are good enough one-on-one, man-to-man, that they can do that. This past Sunday, Mac Jones could have had a sandwich and coffee back there. He had all day to throw. So what were they doing? So to say we're multiple, I don't really know what that means, to be honest with you.
Yeah, and again, I get it. You can't do the same thing over and over. But this team has enough talent. You should be dictating instead of reacting. And it seems like
Right.
They're doing a lot of react. And the other thing is, I think the game plan was we're going to make the rookie quarterback put together sustained drives and force him into making a mistake. Well, he didn't make a mistake, and you ended up with 4 drives of 83 yards or more. So that's not good. That's really, really bad.
And this weekend, they're going to have to be a run defense-oriented defense. If I just repeated myself, sorry, but because they're going to be facing a team that does not throw the football because they can't. So this week's identity, Joe, stop the run, because get people up to the line of scrimmage, flood the box, and do it that way, because that's how they're going to win.
Matt, Dery, and I are going to step aside, take a quick time out. On the other side of the break, we will continue to talk Browns. We head to the voicemail of Truth and Reason. We will also hear some more from Joe Woods. Sports4CLE, we'll be right back. Stay with us.
Welcome back. Back to new friends, new classroom, and learning new things. Back to wearing shoes, man, like real shoes. Back to rushing to class. Back to having questions. Lots of questions. Back to vending machine dinners. Back to too much caffeine, too late at night, but feeling like it was a night well spent. Back to pursuing your dreams and taking control of your future. Come back to go forward. Try C, where futures begin.
When it comes to selling you a mattress, most retailers are handing you a long line of extra steps that drive up costs and create confusion. At the Original Mattress Factory, we simplify the mattress shopping experience by building mattresses and box springs in our own local factories and selling them direct to you. It's short, sweet, and simply makes sense. So experience more than just the mattress store. Experience an original, the Original Mattress Factory.
The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program recognizes role model students and teachers from across Ohio. Nominations can now be done completely online. To nominate a deserving teacher or student, go to ohiolottery.com. In the About section, find Partners in Education. There you will find links to the nomination forms. Students kindergarten through 12th grade can be academic all-stars. Teachers can be honored as a Teacher of the Month. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education, where stars shine. We continue talking Browns with Matt Dery from the Locked On Lions podcast, as well as 92.3 The Fan. Time to head to the voicemail of Truth and Reason. This one about the season to date for the Browns.
Hi, Dave. This is Ron Byer. Dave, I believe this Browns season has been one of extreme overreaction. By this, I mean at the beginning of the season, we looked at the lineup of our roster and thought instant dominance, not thinking it takes time to mesh together as a team. Then the Jekyll and Hyde season began. When totally healthy and on the same page, we looked very good. Then when injuries started to occur and we no longer had our full complement of players, we looked like a disaster. In conclusion, we as fans are disappointed with the season so far. I wish magically for the last 7 games we could have everyone healthy and back playing together as a team. I think then we would see things are not as disastrous as it might seem now. Also, my opinion of the New England game, we are intimidated and outcoached by Bill Belichick. We did not play with the passion and desperation of the team wanting to become one of the elite teams in the NFL. So players quit talking the talk and start playing with all the passion needed to win the final games.
And Matt Dery, Lions Lockdown Podcast, 92.3 The Fan. Everything's still in front of the Browns, but at 5-5, how much confidence do you have that they can run off 3 or 4 wins against the quality teams that are facing them? You know, the Ravens twice, then you got the Bengals, still have the Steelers, still have the Raiders, still have the Packers. I mean, it's a tough schedule. It really is.
You know, Ron's voicemail was a lot like what many of the fans feel. It's as up and down as the team is, Dave. You know, 1 minute Ron's like, hey, we're banged up. You know, we came off a high of last year. And then all of a sudden but they got their butts kicked by the Patriots and out-coached. I think, too, a lot of this Odell stuff and Baker stuff, and let's say Jarvis Landry plays well this week. Can we put that narrative to bed? Because Jarvis is an Odell guy. They let the Odell thing, and credit Andrew Berry, okay? The Browns GM has done a really good job. But the handling of the Beckham situation was a circus. It was not well done. If this guy wanted out of here this summer, then get him out of here. What took so long? And then you had stuff lingering, and then you had where is he going to go, and is he unhappy, and the dad video, and all the things that I know you touched on your show every day for the last few weeks. Now, this week, they got to get Baker or Keenum or whomever to get Landry the ball and get that out of the way. Because if we want to talk about beating the Ravens twice or Pittsburgh or Green Bay or any of these teams coming up, you got to have your house in order. And yes, injuries are part of the game and all of that, but let's get the distractions away, come away with another win. That would be 2 out of 3. Get the bye, get healthy, and go from there. And I think a healthy Nick Chubb, too, is going to be very important moving forward.
Yeah, and you know what? He was on the COVID list, so you hope that he's able to come back and bounce back. It's been all over the board. When people come off that, some don't feel the effects, some do. So we really don't know how severely affected he was. When you look at the Browns, the 5-5 start, what's the most concerning part of that? When I say Browns 5-5, I'm surprised that I'm saying that. What do you think in their play has been the most concerning?
Well, I mean, obviously you thought that the defense was going to be upgraded from a year ago. When they had guys off the street like Robert Jackson playing cornerback, you said, well, first year defensive coordinator and he's playing with guys off the street. It's a COVID year and all of that. This year, like you mentioned, with all the upgrades, whether it be free agency, drafting Newsome, whatever, JOK and guys like that, you'd figure it would be better. And it looks like from a coaching and schematic standpoint, that side of the football just hasn't been there. And remember, like you mentioned, Myles Garrett is healthy. And he wasn't healthy a year ago coming back from COVID and never could really breathe or feel the same during the game. So that's a concern. Look, you want to lose a shootout to the Chargers like it happened earlier in the year, that's fine. But this past week, to not be able to move the football at all against the Patriots was definitely disconcerting after the start of the game looked good. And then Baker, did his thing. So that definitely is, to me still, even if your quarterback is not Johnny Unitas or the Lord Bernie Kosar from the 80s, you still can rely on your defense to tackle people and the offense, and guys on offense to block people. It's almost basic football stuff, but I still think the team is good enough to turn this thing around. And obviously, it starts this weekend.
Yeah, I agree. I think they're a good football team that has not played well at all. Well, the other thing that's been a concern, they're not turning the ball over defensively. That's been a point of emphasis, and Joe Woods talked about that today as well.
It's just one of those things. It's just weird. I mean, our PBUs are up, but the takeaways aren't there. And we pride ourselves in wanting to turn the ball over and take it away. It just hasn't happened. Cincinnati happened in bunches, but we definitely need to get more. That's how you win games. That's how you change games in this league. And we definitely have to be better in that area.
How do you get better in that area?
It's just making the plays when they come your way. We had opportunities, where some of those PBUs you want them to turn into interceptions. When the guy's rushing, he gets a sack, you really want it to be a sack fumble. So we just have to keep pressing it. We chart those things in practice every day. Really talk to the guys about how can we get better taking the ball away.
And Matt, I think you get takeaways when you have an aggressive mindset where you want to dictate, the style that play. I think the more aggressive and dominant your front, whatever 4, 5, 6 is, the more takeaways you're going to get.
Yeah, and Dave, third down. I mean, what is going on? This is shades of the 80s when the Browns. The Browns, look, when it was Bernie and Webster Slaughter and Biner and Mack and Langhorne and all those guys, some of those games, especially some of those Denver games in the playoffs, the Browns had to outscore John Elway and the Broncos because the defense could not get off the field on third down. And it's becoming shades of that a little bit, and that should not be the case when you have players like Myles Garrett and Denzel Ward and John Johnson and guys like that on this defense. So that's like you said, this is the perfect week to send the house and establish an identity of aggressiveness against an 0-8-1 football team with no quarterback. Why not?
Yeah, I don't have the answer. But when you flip sides of the ball, and I know you'll agree with this one, and we've touched on it, Browns have to get the ball to Jarvis Landry, and they also have to have wide receivers make plays, for lack of a better term. Their wide receiver production isn't where it needs to be. Alex Van Pelt talked about getting Jarvis Landry and those wide receivers more involved.
Find ways, whatever it's, quick throws, double moves, get him involved in the run game, whatever it is, but he needs to touch the ball more. We're aware of that. We got to be better, obviously, and more consistent. At times it's good, and at times it's, you look up and we're covered, and it's part of football. We got to do a better job of scheming those guys open, and when we do get the one-on-one matchups, they got to do a better job of creating separation versus man coverage. But that's never changed in offensive football.
And the thing I don't understand about that, Matt, when you run the ball like the Browns have, play action should work. There should be separation.
There should. Something that was not mentioned, let me add, is that this team has a very, very good group of tight ends. Very good. There's no excuse why, like you said, even if it's Johnson running, that they shouldn't be utilizing the tight ends more. Look, OBJ is gone. Hodge from a year ago is gone. It was a big third down guy. But DPJ and Higgins and these others are very capable. But it's almost like, okay, Donovan catches a touchdown pass, and then we don't see him the rest of the game. That makes no sense. Some of that is on Alex Van Pelt as well.
Yeah, some of it is the scheme. Some of it is play calling. If it was an easy fix, I think they'd have fixed it already, and that's the troubling part of it. Matt, Dery, and I are going to step aside, take another time out on the other side of the break. We will continue to talk Browns, getting ready for the Lions. We'll also dive a little bit into Detroit. Matt from the Locked On Lions podcast, 92.3 The Fan, will give us some insight about what's going on with the Lions as well. Sports for CLE. We'll be right back. Stay with us.
Welcome back. Back to new friends, new classroom, and learning new things. Back to wearing shoes, man, like real shoes. Back to rushing to class. Back to having questions. Lots of questions. Back to vending machine dinners. Back to too much caffeine, too late at night, but feeling like it was a night well spent. Back to pursuing your dreams and taking control of your future. Come back to go forward. Try C, where futures begin.
When it comes to selling you a mattress, most retailers are handing you a long line of extra steps that drive up costs and create confusion. At the Original Mattress Factory, we simplify the mattress shopping experience by building mattresses and box springs in our own local factories and selling them direct to you. It's short, sweet, and simply makes sense. So experience more than just a mattress store. Experience an original, the Original Mattress Factory.
The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program recognizes role model students and teachers from across Ohio. Nominations can now be done completely online. To nominate a deserving teacher or student, go to ohiolottery.com. In the About section, find Partners in Education. There you will find links to the nomination forms. Students kindergarten through 12th grade can be academic all-stars. Teachers can be honored as a Teacher of the Month. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education, where stars shine. 5-5 Browns trying to finish up strong, still within a game and a half in the AFC North, and not far out of that top seed in the AFC, but running out of time to get things rolling. Jay Glazer was on the Pat McAfee show. This is what he had to say about the Browns with Baker Mayfield the rest of this year and then moving forward as well.
Cleveland's still, they're tough. They're in it. It's just, man, the running backs keep going down. That's a team that you need that running game, right? So Baker, who has those injuries, he's going to need him. Here's the other thing about this, though, gang. He's going to need shoulder surgery in the offseason. Right? He's going to have to get this thing fixed. Yeah. So you want to try and, okay, it's going to be a long-term deal, but he needs surgery. So that's what I'm saying. It's that one's pretty murky. Yeah. If all is said and done, he's fully healthy and, man, we continue to win, then, yeah, I think, and look, they are a winning team with him these last 2 years, that I think all is said and done, yeah, you go and try and re-sign Baker, because when you don't have a quarterback at all in this league, man,
Oh, yeah.
it's miserable. It's awful.
You stink. And also, I was thinking maybe the football gods would potentially dump on Cleveland if they finally get a quarterback after that jersey was created with 700 names on it that wins for them, and then you decide to move on. Maybe the football gods would be like, you guys started to win, and you f***ed it up.
And Matt Dery, the football gods.
Dave, you should do your show in a tank top like McAfee. What do you think? Talk to Adam about it.
Yeah, I don't know. But you know what? Jake Glazer makes a valid point, and we'll allude to this. We'll dive into this. When you don't have a quarterback in the NFL, Browns fans know it's miserable. So I just don't think you can get a real accurate read on what Baker Mayfield's ceiling is, because one, he hasn't been in a system 2 years in a row. This is the first time he's been in a system the second year, and in the second game of the season, he got beat up, and he's been beat up all year. So do you really know honestly what his ceiling is? If you do, you've got it figured out a whole lot more than I do. I can't get that. I can't get a feel for that.
No, you're not alone. I think there's plenty of people that feel the same way you do. But unfortunately, there are plenty sports radio callers out there and others who will tell you he sucks. I don't think he sucks, and I don't think he's great. And so that's where we kind of are in the middle here. Contractually, what do? They've got to pull the trigger and figure that out. His agent, because there's so many bad quarterbacks in this league, and guys like Taylor Heineke are playing and winning football games, his agent and his representatives can look at it and say, look, this guy won a playoff game on the road in Pittsburgh, whether there were fans there or not last year. So there's going to be a payday. There's going to be a team that would want to pay him pretty big money. The question is, will the Browns do it? And could the Browns want to be creative enough and gutsy enough to say, Aaron Rodgers, Deshaun Watson, Derek Carr, Russell Wilson, there could be guys this summer or this winter that say, we want out of our current position. We know Rodgers doesn't want to be in Green Bay anymore. Maybe Russ wants a little change of scenery from Seattle. Deshaun Watson is out there and not playing for Houston. Would the Browns do that? Could they come up with the resources to make that happen? Or do you stay in-house and hope for the best? The only thing they can control right now is these last 7 games. And whether Baker, banged up or not and needing surgery or not, like Jay Glazer said, can he do the job well enough to, mind the store here? No one's asking Baker Mayfield to be Big Ben from 10 years ago when he won a Super Bowl with the Steelers, or Aaron Rodgers or anybody like that. They're asking him to get enough done, do enough, and get this run game going with it to win a game or 2 or 3 in the playoffs. And those are the expectations. So I'm with you. I still don't know, but he's the best guy now. This idea of bench him for Keenum or trade him now, although they can't trade him, cut him, let him go. Let's see what he does the rest of the way.
Yeah, and again, what's the option? If you move on from Baker Mayfield, tell me what the option is. Because then if you give me an option, I can tell you whether I think it's a good idea or a bad idea.
Well, and have you seen this draft class of quarterbacks?
It's not good.
It's booty. Okay, it's bad.
Yeah.
Like Kenny Pickett. Okay. I mean, kid's playing well at Pittsburgh, but if he's the best quarterback of the lot and he was a projected 3rd or 4th rounder before the season, what does that tell you?
Yeah.
This is not the year. This is not the year to be wanting to go, we got our eye on a couple of rookies. Then you're starting over.
Yeah. And this team has pieces to be really good. All right, Bleacher Report. Tell me if you buy this one. Dark horse teams that can make a Super Bowl run. Number 1, Patriots. Number 2, Browns. 3, Bengals. 4, Colts. 5, Vikings.
Well, no, I don't think there's any. Minnesota you take out. They're in too tough of a conference.
Yeah.
AFC is so wide open.
You think the Browns
Colts,
could the Browns make one? What do you think?
Yes, I want to see what they look like Sunday. Yes, I would say based on the competition and what's out there, and the fact that we've seen Buffalo stub their toe, we've seen Baltimore, as you referenced earlier, and I will talk about next segment, nearly lost to the Lions. Yes, I think any of those AFC teams, I'd say the Colts, no, based on I don't think Carson Wentz is good enough. But the Browns, yes. I don't see why they can't make a run. The Patriots, absolutely. You saw how they looked. They went from a team 3 weeks ago that people thought could be to use an NBA phrase, a lottery team, and now everybody's loving on them again. AFC is wide open.
Matt, Dery, and I are going to step aside, take one more time out. On the other side of the break, it's all Browns Lions straight ahead. Sports for CLE. We'll be right back. Stay with us.
When it comes to selling you a mattress, most retailers are handing you a long line of extra steps that drive up costs and create confusion. At the Original Mattress Factory, we simplify the mattress shopping experience by building mattresses and box springs in our own local factories and selling them direct to you. It's short, sweet, and simply makes sense. So experience more than just the mattress store. Experience an original, the Original Mattress Factory.
The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program recognizes role model students and teachers from across Ohio. Nominations can now be done completely online. To nominate a deserving teacher or student, go to ohiolottery.com. In the About section, find Partners in Education. There you will find links to the nomination forms. Students kindergarten through 12th grade can be academic all-stars. Teachers can be honored as a Teacher of the Month. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education, where stars shine.
Thanks for buying a fishing license. I want you to picture all the great things this simple purchase does, like building public boat ramps, keeping local waters clean, and maintaining a healthy fish population.
What's Mom doing?
When you buy a fishing license, you do a lot. Every dollar protects and maintains your local waterways for future generations to enjoy. Visit takemefishing.org.
Browns Lions Sunday at 1 o'clock over at First Energy Stadium. Matt Dery from the Locked On Lions podcast, as well as 92.3 The Fan. You've alluded to it, quarterback issues in Detroit. What's going on, and how concerned should Browns fans be when Baker Mayfield is mentioned in the same breath with Jared Goff? You like that, don't you?
Hold on. I'll say this. All right, as somebody that lives in Detroit but is a Clevelander and fills in on the radio in Cleveland, and like you mentioned, I'll be on the Fan Friday morning after Thanksgiving. Baker Mayfield, if the Lions could swap quarterbacks right now, they would do it so fast you have no idea. I mean, for as bad as Baker Mayfield maybe has looked at times, the Jared Goff experience here in the Motor City is an abomination. David, he is just not good. And I was talking to Ken Carman and Anthony Lima this morning on the Fan about it. He's not getting it done. And to sit here and say, well, he's banged up and hurt, or he's tough, or he has no run game, or he has no pass game. It's the Lions. I get it. But when you can't throw the football forward, like he could not last week. Some of it was an oblique injury, but my goodness gracious. I mean, if you're the Browns again this Sunday, you are loading up that box and you are making the Lions run, 10 against 10 men because the Lions passing game is that bad. And Jared Goff, I don't understand it. This was a former number one pick. This was a guy that was in a Super Bowl a few years ago, but he has regressed so badly that it's tough. It's tough to watch.
Lions coming off a game where they tied the Steelers. They should have beat the Ravens, except for a malfunctioning extended play clock and then a 66-yard field goal. It's not a talented team, but it's a team that appears to play and play and play and tries to find a way to win.
Yeah, a couple of weeks ago, they got their butts whooped by the Eagles, and people question why. How do you have a clunker like that? I think every team's going to have them. But like you said, Dan Campbell has come in. He's tried to change the culture a little bit. The guys like playing for him. They're together. They are trying for the most part. They're playing a lot of young people. but they're so banged up. Their best offensive player, their center and Pro Bowler Frank Ragnow, is out for the year. Their best defensive player, Romeo Okwara, out for the year. Jeff Okudah, their best cornerback, and former Ohio State Buckeye, done for the season. So they're young, and they're just not good. There's not a lot of talent there, and a lot of that was due to the general manager, Bob Quinn, the previous GM, and now Brad Holmes has taken over with help from guys like John Dorsey, who we know, and Chris Spielman. So they're doing the best they can with what they have, but it's not a good scene. It's not a team that has enough talent on either side of the ball, and it's a struggle. And this past Sunday, to be honest with you, Dave, they should have beaten Pittsburgh. They had every opportunity to beat the Steelers and couldn't do it. So a tie, yes. They won't go in 17, but I mean, that game was gross. They should have won.
Now, here's a question. How do they, if they're going to find a way to beat the Browns, what do they do? So what do the Browns have to guard against? How in the world could the Lions beat the Browns?
Well, number one, the running game is good. The Lions' run game with DeAndre Swift, Jamal Williams, if he's healthy, and that offensive line is not all bad, actually. So if the Lions punch the Browns in the mouth and block like they did against the Steelers last week and run the football, they're going to be in decent shape. They'll be in the game. Turnovers, certainly. You mentioned the Browns can't get any. Neither can the Lions. But what if Detroit comes up with a couple of plays and gets the job done? Field position. The Lions do well with their punting team and Jack Fox, who's a Pro Bowl punter. So if they pin the Browns deep and the Browns make a mistake or two, that could keep the Lions in the game. Also, Dan Campbell is a guy that he's going for it a lot of times on fourth down. He's now calling the plays as offensive coordinator, stripping the duties of Anthony Lynn starting last week. So maybe Campbell gets aggressive. Against the Rams, they ran 2 fake punts. They also ran an onside kick. So gimmicking up the game, and the Browns aren't ready for it, could keep the Lions in.
All right, before I let you go, who do you think wins this, and do you think it's, give me like just a ballpark. I want to ask you for a specific score. Who do you think you win? Who do you think wins and by how much, roughly?
Well, I think if Goff tries to play and he still has this oblique problem, I think that's a bad move for the Lions. I think the Lions need to give Tim Boyle, the backup, a chance. I don't think Goff is healthy enough to go. But the Goff attempting to play and tough it out routine could lead to a big day for guys like Myles Garrett and others getting in the backfield. So, depending on the quarterback situation with Detroit, not that Boyle is any good either, I see this being a 27-10 Browns win. I think the Browns bounce back. They need this badly. And the Lions, back-to-back weeks on the road against playoff teams, Pittsburgh and Cleveland, they really overachieved last week and should have won. So I think this week's the come-down game a little bit. I think the Browns win 27-10.
Matt Dery, as always, appreciate the time and the insight. Matt Dery from the Locked On Lions podcast, 92.3 The Fan, Thanksgiving weekend. Make sure you tune in. What time are you going to be on 92.3 The Fan coming up?
Friday morning after Thanksgiving, 7 to 11. So we'll certainly be talking Michigan, Ohio State, and the Browns as well.
All right. Matt Dery, as always, appreciate the time and the insight. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Dave.
All right, Matt Dery from 92.3 The Fan, as well as the Locked On Lions podcast. We're going to continue talking Browns, getting ready for those Lions. Mac Robinson from 92.3 The Fan will join us. Sports4CLE, we'll be right back. Stay with us.
Welcome back. Back to new friends, new classroom, and learning new things. Back to wearing shoes, man, like real shoes. Back to rushing to class. Back to having questions. Lots of questions. Back to vending machine dinners. Back to too much caffeine. Too late at night. But feeling like it was a night well spent. Back to pursuing your dreams and taking control of your future. Come back to go forward. Try C, where futures begin.
We continue talking Browns, 5-5 on the year, getting ready for the 0-8-1 Detroit Lions Sunday at 1 o'clock over at First Energy Stadium. This is from ESPN's Get Up. Former Jets general manager Mike Tannenbaum on the Browns and what they should do with Baker Mayfield.
They have to move on from him right now, and here's why. When you drive to the stadium on Sunday morning in Foxborough, no Kareem Hunt, no Nick Chubb, you say to yourself, this is an opportunity for Baker Mayfield to elevate the program and say, hey, this is a guy that can get us to where we go and show greatness. Well, we now know that he is not good enough by any standard, and therefore, when you're flying home from Foxborough to Berea, you have to say to yourself, Aaron Rodgers, Russell Wilson, Deshaun Watson, I'm going to do whatever I have to do to get one of those three, or I'm going to go get Jimmy Garoppolo or Cam Newton. But you cannot win a championship with Baker Mayfield in the AFC, especially when you look at the ages of guys like Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, and everybody else. So we learned a lot on Sunday, and the honest and sober analysis is we have to move on from him.
Mac Robinson from 92.3 The Fan. This is why I think Mike Tannenbaum is wrong, and here is why. Jimmy Garoppolo and Cam Newton? Really? Can he answer the question, is it Cam Newton back when he could throw or when he can't throw like now?
Yeah, and also, to be honest, for him saying it's sobering, look, to have that analysis, you have to be drunk in order to be throwing out there Jimmy Garoppolo and Derek Carr. Let's be honest here. Especially coming from the guy who's answer and trading up for was Mark Sanchez for years. I'm sorry, I'm not buying this whatsoever. And, you know, again, I understand that this year it hasn't been great. You know, it really hasn't been. There's no sugarcoating it. Baker should have been better Sunday. The offense should have been better Sunday. The fact that the first drive of the game was a touchdown and that was it was a disgrace for this Browns offense. But at the same time, you got to understand the context of this, given the fact that, again, no Kareem Hunt, no Nick Chubb. And I know that this could have been a game where Baker shows out fine. I'll give you that. Honestly, that's a fair point. But at the same time, the way that I see this and the way that this played out, you know, honestly, this is I genuinely look at this game, and I think that when it comes to Baker Mayfield, I think that I have seen them do better. And last year, you can look at the success that you were able to have with Baker Mayfield. Again, this is a team that fought against Kansas City and had them again on the ropes at that point in the fourth quarter in the AFC semis. You know, they were a drive away from going in a Chad Henne stop away from going to the AFC Championship game and taking out the team that ended up losing in the Super Bowl. So to say that he's a quarterback that can't win the AFC, I disagree with that vehemently. And, you know, I look at overall the way that this has played out. And, you know, again, this season isn't, you know, it hasn't been great, you know, honestly. There's no way to sugarcoat it. But looking at the way that this is, you know, next year is the ultimate season for Baker Mayfield. Next year is put up or shut up time for this team and for Baker Mayfield in general. But to say that after a Week 10 game in an 18-week season, 17 games, including the bye week, to say that that's where you're going out and saying they have to get rid of him now. This is it. They can't do it. And your options are Cam Newton and Jimmy Garoppolo. It's just baffling to me. And I think it's an absolute joke from Mike Tannenbaum at that point.
Yeah, I would say the Browns, it's a year where they have not been able to get a handle on what exactly Baker Mayfield is. Part of it is due to injury, and I know you can't use that excuse. But when you're evaluating a quarterback that you think could be a franchise quarterback, you need all of the input that you have. And I don't think Andrew Berry can get an accurate gauge on what Baker Mayfield can be based on this year. And you know what? They don't have to. Good GMs don't make moves until they have to make them. And I think Andrew Berry is a good GM. So, you know, he may let the fifth year play out and then see what happens. So, again, pump the brakes on, boy, they have to move on from him now. I don't get that. All right. Joel Bitonio, Browns offensive lineman, he knows a thing or two about teams that have struggled. He played on a couple of them here for the Browns, longest tenured Brown. He talked about the inconsistency of this year's team and just trying to get it fixed.
It really comes down to, executing each week and it seems like when we play well, we play pretty well, and we've been playing bad, we've played pretty bad. We've had a couple blowouts in both directions the last couple weeks, but we just want to be the same team every week. I think Coach Stefanski does do a good job of being the same guy, every day, having the same attitude, and we just need to kind of take that approach as players and really just, show up every week and perform to the best of our abilities. It really is like every guy, going in the huddle, they're 1/11th each play and just being like, what can I do to, make this play work? And on both sides of the ball, really. But we do need to find a way to be more consistent, and, it starts this week.
Well, they're running out of this week's. 5-5. When you play really well and then you play really bad the next week, that's kind of the definition of a 500 team at this point.
Yeah, and Dave, in contrast, last year, at least you saw a relatively consistent, ramp up as the season went on. After, the first week, obviously losing to Baltimore, but then you had that 4-game winning streak where they were building and building and building. And sure, they had the loss to Pittsburgh, but they continued to build and build and build as the season went on. And you could see that kind of linear growth from week to week where there were different things that they were improving upon. Yes, there were still things still areas to improve, but at the same time, overall, they were relatively improving at a steady pace and to the point where they were playing their best football at the end of the year, which is what you want to see. And the problem is that the Browns, you've seen weeks where they've done phenomenal against Kansas City, but ended up coming up just short, then really playing down to the Texans, then completely demolishing the Bears. And it's been up and down every week. It's been a roller coaster ride, but that's an understatement at this point. I'm getting motion sickness from the way that this team has been playing week to week. I look at the way that the Browns have played, and, especially under Kevin Stefanski last year where, it was consistency and getting that week in, week out type of play from these guys. You haven't seen it. You haven't seen it to this point. And, honestly, like you said, it's really a 500 team at this point, and you are what your record is, honestly. And looking at the way the season has played out for the Cleveland Browns, it makes sense. And, I've tried to kind of quantify and try to figure out, how does this make sense for a team that is this talented on paper to be this inconsistent and this poor, the way that they've played so far this year at times? I don't have an answer, but at the same time, again, just they have to get more consistent. And that's the one thing that I'm looking at for week to week when it comes to this team.
Yeah, and it's both sides of the ball. It isn't one thing, and it isn't the offense, and it isn't the defense. On any given week, one aspect of football is very inconsistent for the Browns, minus the Cincinnati game where they played pretty consistent on both sides of the ball. All right, defensive coordinator Joe Woods talked about one of the trouble areas for the Browns, really on both sides of the ball. This on the defensive side of the ball, his ball, and that's 3rd and 4th downs. They've been all over the place on it. Most times not good. Here's Joe Woods on trying to get 3rd and 4th down cleaned up.
We went back and just looked at everything, obviously, from that game, and then things that we were doing earlier, specifically on 3rd and 4th down. And you just go back and look at the things that you did well, and you look at when you didn't have success, what were the reasons behind it. And there's multiple things. And I always start with myself as a coordinator. I believe that. How can I fix myself? How can I put the guys in a better position? So from that standpoint, down to what we're calling, down to the players, eliminating penalties or executing better, we looked at it all and just made some slight adjustments in terms of what we're going to do coverage-wise.
Mac, earlier in the show, we heard Joe Woods say that the identity of this team was that they were multiple. I don't think I want that as an identity for a defense. To me, that means you really don't have an identity. If you're multiple, you're trying to figure out how you're going to win.
Well, and you talk about being multiple. There's a difference between being multiple and being versatile. Because at least when you're talking about multiple, okay, sure, you have different things that you can do. Versatility means that we can go ahead and we can implement this and be good at it. Being multiple, like you said, I don't know what we are. That's basically just me telling you, you know what, we're going to throw something at you. Last week he talked about we're going to throw in more man coverage. I'm sorry, but this past week looked softer than Sharman. I mean, I look at the way that this ended up playing out and the zone coverage that they were running again and again and again. It's not like you have world beaters on the outside. Kendrick Bourne was a cast off from Kyle Shanahan, which clearly we've seen that's worked out in the past. But between him, and then you have Nelson Aguilar, who basically was hated more than Santa at this point. And I look at the way that these wide receivers played out. They aren't big threats. You almost gave up 100 yards to Kendrick Bourne on the weekend. And on top of that, the biggest focus that everybody talked about coming into this week was the tight ends and Hunter Henry and Jonnu Smith that they overpaid for this offseason. Hunter Henry got 2 touchdowns in the red zone. I don't understand what Joe Woods' adjustments even are. I know that he spoke to reporters earlier and talked about, we got ahead, we got the stop right after halftime for those halftime adjustments. That's like the one guy in your group that goes ahead and does nothing. But the one thing that he does, he makes sure that you know damn well that he did that one thing that one time. Every other drive during the game, they scored or got a touchdown or a field goal, except for the last drive of the game where they ended the game. They didn't have a chance to score. So I don't understand why Joe Woods is running a victory lap and talking about adjustments when he really hasn't adjusted anything at all.
Well, and my thing is figure out what you do well and do it. And don't try to don't overthink it. If you've got a bunch of guys that want to get after the quarterback and you have guys that appear to be pretty good in tight coverage, at least they did against the Bengals, who have one of the more talented group of wide receivers in the league. Go do that. And if you want to switch it up every once in a while, great. Don't do the same thing on back-to-back downs, but your identity should be, let's get Denzel Ward and Greg Newsome on the wide receivers, and let's turn the guys loose that like to get after the quarterback. I've seen it against the Bears. That was pretty good. I saw it against the Bengals. That was pretty good. I sure didn't see it against the Patriots. I didn't see it last week.
And that's the biggest thing is for a guy who's talking about being versatile. He's been talking about we're a multiple defense, but at the same time we've seen soft zone against the Chiefs. We've seen soft zone this past week against the Patriots. We've seen it time and time again against the Steelers, especially. For a defense that's multiple, they run the same defense time and time again. And again, last week, like you said, when they actually run man and they're aggressive going after the quarterback, you see success. And what happens the next week? They immediately go away from it. I don't understand what he's trying to do, and especially when he says that a defense is multiple, and he doesn't do anything to showcase that they are being multiple. And they just run the same defense time and time again.
Mac Robinson from 92.3 The Fan. Now going to step aside, take a quick timeout. On the other side of the break, we'll continue talking Browns, getting ready to face the 0-8-1 Detroit Lions Sunday over at First Energy Stadium. Sports4CLE will be right back. Stay with us.
Welcome back. Back to new friends, new classroom, and learning new things. Back to wearing shoes, man, like real shoes. Back to rushing to class. Back to having questions. Lots of questions. Back to vending machine dinners. Back to too much caffeine. Too late at night. But feeling like it was a night well spent. Back to pursuing your dreams and taking control of your future. Come back to go forward. Try C, where futures begin.
Sports4CLE continues. We continue talking Browns with Mac Robinson. You can listen to him tomorrow night, 7 to midnight on 92.3 The Fan. All right, Emmanuel Acho from FS1's Speak For Yourself says Baker Mayfield cost himself some money, but not a new contract. Here's Emmanuel Acho.
He's cost himself more money in his deal that is to come, but he hasn't cost himself a new deal. Here's why I say this. The ultimate signature on a new deal is the owner. And the owner of the Cleveland Browns is Jimmy Haslam. Jimmy Haslam and I arrived in Cleveland at the same time. What that means is this. Jimmy Haslam knows of every quarterback that has preceded Baker Mayfield, including the quarterbacks I played with and everyone that came afterwards. Jimmy Haslam realizes that there were 12 quarterbacks that arrived in Cleveland prior to Baker Mayfield, and none of them won games at the rate that Baker Mayfield has won games. I'm not going to shout them all out, but y'all look at it. You got guys like Deshaun Kaiser who were 0-15, guys like Josh McCown who were 1-10. You got guys like Robert Griffin who was 1-4, guys like Johnny Manziel, first-round pick, who were 2-6. You all get the point. 12 quarterbacks that preceded Baker Mayfield, it took them 96 games just to win 20. It took Baker Mayfield 41 games to win 21. So if you are Jimmy Haslam and you are the ultimate signature on a new deal for Baker Mayfield, and you know what existed prior to Baker Mayfield, you will not hesitate to sign a deal for Baker Mayfield.
And Mac Robinson, that's a valid point. You have pause for concern with the dollar figure. You know, $40 million a year probably isn't going to happen. Mid-30s, maybe something like that. And again, we're all throwing darts at the wall with that when we find out what the salary cap is. But what's the option? I guess is the good GM, and again, I've said I think Andrew Berry's a good GM, is going to say, what's my option?
Yeah, and that's exactly the point, because, again, you either go back to, the NFL draft and bring in a rookie where, again, with Baker Mayfield, because you're winning games, you aren't going to have a high draft pick, so therefore you're going to have to give up a lot of draft capital to move back up. I understand people wanting, a new quarterback at a certain point. You think that there can be a higher option, but again, I look at the quarterbacks that are out there. I just don't see an option that makes sense for the Browns, because you also look at the possible veteran options. And again, I would almost venture to say that, and Aaron Rodgers isn't going to want to come here. Russell Wilson, I don't think will come here. And on top of that, it's not just signing those guys, it's trading for those guys, giving up more assets at that point that you can use to fill out your roster at this point. So I look at it and just think that, yeah, he's going to end up getting an extension. Is it going to be for as much money as he thought he probably could have gotten before the year? Absolutely not. I don't think that's the case at all. But I do think that they are going to go through 2022, and I don't necessarily think that he's going to get a deal done this offseason after the way that this season has played out. I think that Baker Mayfield has shown in the past that he's willing to bet on himself. He's willing to bet on his play. And I think that he is willing to go through 2022 without having a contract extension under his belt. I look at the way that this has played out, and, I do think that Acho is right in this case, where he makes a valid point, where Jimmy Haslam understands and he likes Baker at this point. So, you know what? I think that he will get that deal done eventually. Do I think that it will happen this offseason? No. But I do think that a deal will get done eventually with Baker Mayfield.
Well, the other thing that has been a challenge for the Browns, penalties. It has gotten better, without question. Joel Bitonio, again, Browns offensive lineman, talked about what the Browns have been doing to try to correct a lot of the penalties that they've had called against them.
A few weeks ago, we starting the period over. We have a penalty in practice, so you got a penalty on the third play. You go back to the first play and try and do it right. So we're really trying to focus, like I said, on the details and just get things right. Because those are things you can control. Not everything happens, but I know we've been one of the worst penalized teams in the league, and that's not something we want to be.
You guys still doing that?
Yeah.
And again, it's an interesting way to make people focus and put an emphasis on not having penalties. Kind of like it.
Yeah, look, whatever helps them to get to avoid those penalties, I'm all for it, by all means at this point, because I understand that some calls can be ticky-tack, and I understand that, some calls you're going to disagree with. That. And you can see that even in the Bears Monday night game against Pittsburgh, obviously that big taunting call. But, again, at a certain point, that is kind of on you when you're getting into those positions. So I do think that, for the Browns, it's something that they are working to improve, and I'm glad that they are. And, as the season goes on, I'm hoping that trend continues where they're kind of improving in that regard. But I'd like to see them avoid some of those ticky-tack penalties.
All right, let's quickly dive into the Lions matchup. Some of the keys. So Browns-Lions, 1 o'clock on Sunday over at First Energy Stadium. What do they need to do to take this, being the Browns? What do they need to do to get back over 500?
Well, the one thing I will say is taking advantage of the run game. I think that the Lions, obviously they showed it last week against Pittsburgh. They really put an emphasis on running the ball. Jamal Williams, he was back in practice today with the Lions. He was having some fun in his press conference with his helmet throughout it. But, for the Lions, they're going to try to run the ball down your throat with Williams, DeAndre Swift and company. They really put an emphasis on that. And you got to put pressure, whether it be Jared Goff, who didn't practice today as well. Tim Boyle, who's been taking the first string reps, or, familiar face David Blau. If the Browns are able to take advantage of that and get after the quarterback as well as stopping the run, I think that's going to be huge. And the biggest one, and Dave, I know you talk about it every single week, but it's about forcing those turnovers, man, because, again, the Lions, a lot of times they'll end up hurting themselves, but you really have to take care of the football, and you have to force those takeaways from the Lions at that point, because, again, if they're able to run the ball, take away some of that clock and take away some of those possessions, I think that's going to be huge for them. I really think that this is going to go one of two ways. Either it's going to be close, where it's going to be like 20-17, or it's going to be some kind of a massive blowout where the Browns are able to kind of put this behind them. But I do think that the Browns are going to be able to get the win this week.
Yeah, the one thing I would say is this is a team they should beat up, similar to what they did to the Chicago Bears. And that's kind of what I want to see, because the next one is, the next one's one that you've had circled for a while. It's the Raiders Sunday night, Thanksgiving week. But getting ahead of ourselves, they need to put a beat down on the Lions. They just do.
Yeah, and especially coming off of as putrid of a game that they had against the Steelers. And I know it was bad on both sides, but again, for that bad of a game that they had passing the ball, again, I was shocked looking at the stats. I didn't realize that Jared Goff got over the century mark in that game. And the fact that he didn't even throw an interception in that game as well. I think that the Browns, they have to pressure whoever's at quarterback. Doesn't really matter. The wide receivers on the outside, again, they don't really have a ton of players out there. But like you said, this is a game that the Browns should win. And throughout this season, the Browns have ended up taking care of business more times than not, especially against teams that they really should be beating at this point. And looking at the rest of the schedule, it's pretty tough opponents. So the Browns have to get this win under their belt this week.
Without question. Mac Robinson from 92.3 The Fan. And again, Mac will be hosting tomorrow, 92.3 The Fan, from 7 until midnight, so you can call in and talk to him. Mac, as always, appreciate the time and the insight. Thanks very much.
Of course, Dave. Always love hopping on with you guys. Thank you.
All right. Again, Mac Robinson, 92.3 The Fan. Tune in tomorrow. You can hear him from 7 to midnight. That's going to do it for this edition of Sports for CLE. We will see you again back here tomorrow at 4 o'clock. The D-Man, Dennis Maniloff, and Cameron Justice from NewsChannel5.com will join us. That is tomorrow at 4 here on Sports for CLE. Have a good night, everybody. We'll see you tomorrow.